Hey, before I get started, a big shout out to a viewer of mine that I've taken out fishing twice now. I took him out once last year, and then we went out going over jigs just a few weeks back. He sent me an email. His 11-year-old son, Steven, just notched his first quality bass, a 3.25 pound largemouth right here. He had caught bass before that, but never really anything in that, good solid size category, just a lot of dinks. He caught it on a flashy swimmer with a 3.3 Kitech for a trailer, so that's super cool. Congrats, Steven. That's a quality fish. I don't know of a tournament or a day I've ever fished where I wouldn't be happy to take a photo or weigh in a 3.25. Good job sticking with it. They went back out again later that night and got skunked, and that's how it goes sometimes. I went out last Sunday and got skunked. It's just the way it is. Good job fighting that fish and getting it into the boat. Keep after it. He's only 11 years old. I caught my first bass when I was 13, so he's 2 years ahead of me on the game. But good job, and thank you, Ian, for sharing that story. I appreciate it. You know what happens now. So a different viewer and I were out fishing on Sunday, fishing as much as going through the motions, going over baits, talking scenarios, talking what ifs, why this, what that. A lot of really good questions, and I just love that. I love questions that I can answer out of experiences that I've had and things that I've learned over the decades. I'm not the end-all be-all authority on bass fishing in Washington State by any stretch of the imagination. The information I put out in these videos is based on decades of me out chasing this stuff and learning the hard way and going through major learning curves and figuring stuff out and observing fish and observing my baits and understanding and playing and experimenting with stuff. I hope I don't come across as trying to be a know-it-all or anything like that. I'm still learning. The guy I took out Sunday was shocked to hear me say that, but I don't think the learning ever stops in bass fishing. But we got on the subject of matching the hatch. We've all heard that even back in trout fishing days, match the hatch. So I kind of want to simplify that and get into what do you mean by match the hatch, how to do it, what things to look for, and baits to try, how long to stick with baits, how long to try different types of baits for bass when you're trying to match the hatch. What does that process even look like? We're going to get into that. I'm going to break it down. I'm going to go through some different types of forage, different baits that might emulate that forage, and things maybe you didn't think about. So obviously, being a predatory fish, bass will eat whatever fits in its mouth for the most part. Part of matching the hatch is you as an angler knowing what forage lives in a lake that you're going to go try to fish for bass. That'll help you out on lure selection, color selection, things like that. But we can kind of break it down into the basic food groups, if you will, of bass forage. Obviously, you have things that crawl on the bottom, your crawfish, grubs, even night crawlers that get washed into the lake. Snakes, aquatic snails, things like that, things that kind of live around the bottom. Sculpin don't have swim bladders, so they typically hug the bottom and just kind of shuffle around on the bottom. What I call long skinny fish, so trout, perch, those stickleback herring on Lake Washington, short round fish, your crappie, your bluegill, your pumpkin seeds. For the most part, pumpkin seeds, crappie are going to be what's your dominant, like your short fat type of fish in our waters. Amphibians, that is frogs, bullfrogs, tree frogs, just some little pond frogs, salamanders. These are all things that are different shapes of food, but they kind of live in lakes the same way. They're mainly towards the banks. Salamanders will be along the bottom. They can swim up through the water column. They like to come up and breathe there, and they can be different colors in different lakes. Rodents fall in the category of obviously rats. Rats do swim in the water. Muskrats. Up in Skagit County and some other places, we got those things called nutria, which look like a cross between a muskrat and a rat. And then you get into your waterfowl. So any birds that nest out over the water, they have little birds in their nest. Them things fall out and fall in the water. That's food. Ducklings, goslings in like the first month of life are small enough for a 5-pound bass to eat. They get a little bit bigger, then a little bit bigger bass is going to eat them. Bats, for crying out loud. I've seen bats in the water night fishing trying to climb towards my boat, trying to get out of the water and get on land. Somehow they goofed up, zigged when they should have zagged, and now you got a bat flapping around in the water. So when it comes to matching the hatch on all those different types of forage, the way I approach it, just to simplify it, is I will go with short fat, long skinny. And I kind of leave it at that. And what I mean by that is, even looking at your crankbaits, you've got a short fat, long and skinny. In topwater baits, you've got a short fat, you've got long and skinny. Staying in the hard baits, square bill, short and fat, jerk bait, long and skinny. So if you think about that, short fat, long skinny is a quick way, an easy way to change baits on a given day to try to match whatever forage the bass is keen on a given day, at a given time of year even. You know, jigs and swim baits are two baits that can work 365 days a year, and they're two of the probably the top forage items in any lake. So especially swim baits that look like trout. Most of our lakes, almost all of our lakes, have trout in them, and the majority of our lakes have some form of crawfish in them. What you're getting into is a forage that's typically readily available, forage that the bass are used to seeing in their body of water, and because they are opportunistic ambush predators, if something gets close enough, they're apt to eat it. However, what happens on a given day is they might be out to eat crawfish, and that's what they're keying on a specific day. They might be out after minnow style baits or minnow style forage, and that's what they're keying on a given day. If it happens to be a time where they're keying on trout, then this might get slammed. But if they're short striking this, they're telling you that they like that shape, long and skinny, but maybe they're looking for perch. You're wanting to run something with more of a perch look, perch colors, and now maybe they start chomping it. Well, you just unlock the fact that they're feeding on fish that day, and they're targeting and keen for whatever reason, perch over trout. And it could be the other way around, where they're really targeting trout. Every year, Washington Fish and Wildlife backs trucks up to our lakes and dumps in tons of trout. And you know full well, those bass key into that feeding frenzy that happens when thousands of pieces of forage are all of a sudden dumped in a lake. But one of the things we talked about on Sunday was, does it go deeper than that? When you pick out something to eat for dinner, you might be craving a certain food, right? Like you're like, oh man, I'm really craving steak, or I'm really craving tacos, or I'm really craving this. What's the hidden meaning behind that? Is because your body typically is telling you it wants certain nutrients, and these are the foods that's going to make you crave because those foods possess X nutrients. So for instance, big gob of protein in a crawfish. Crawfish provides certain minerals and vitamins and nutrients, I'm sure, that the bass need to live and survive and thrive. But is it the same nutrients that a trout or a perch provide? Possibly not. Possibly they're after trout on certain days because they want the amino acids, the different nutrients that are in a trout, the different nutrients that are in a perch. That's something that I don't know the answer to that, if it is or isn't. But I do know, and I've experienced many times over the years, a day where I'm fishing and I'm nothing. And I'll switch baits, nothing. And I'm switch baits and I'll switch baits and I'll switch baits. And all of a sudden I'll get hit. And I'm like, okay, I just caught a fish. Was it an accident? I just happened to throw it in front of a fish's face? Or did I just key into something? And there's an old adage, one fish is an accident, two fish is a pattern. So I'll keep throwing that bait and see if I get another reaction. Boom. Okay, now maybe I'm unlocking something. What depth was that fish in? All the other steps that you have to go through to determine whether you're on a pattern or not. But by going through those baits and changing it up, you're going through that process trying to match the hatch of the day. You can throw jigs all day and never get bit. You can go out and throw jigs and just smash them. So most of the time, the fish decide what the heck they're going to eat on a given day. So it's your job kind of to go through that bait progression and try to key in on whatever that may be. The easy step to doing that is thinking long, skinny, short, fat. And you can do that throughout the water column. If I'm throwing a short fat frog around the lily pads, the pad edges, over grass, everything, and it's just nothing's happening, maybe I switch up and I throw a spook for a while. Maybe I throw a floating Rapala, something that's long and skinny, and see if that elicits a strike of some kind. Varying the shapes and sizes of your bait is just as important as playing around with color. And what I've always told people is, if you're fishing any lure and it gets hit, but the fish doesn't stick, or you're fishing a bait with a trailer hook and you keep hooking them on the trailer hook, you got to tweak the color. My adage for tweaking color on baits is light, bright, dark. What I mean by light, bright, dark is, so my light baits are going to be something more realistic looking, just a more natural looking bait. You're just your natural colored baits. My bright, predominantly white baits, chartreuse, bright oranges, something that's got pop to it. And then obviously dark, your black and blues, your watermelons, your green pumpkins. But that's something to play around with once you interact with a fish. The fish is telling you something. The fish is saying, I like that shape, but that color was wrong, so I turned off at the last minute and just kind of bumped your bait, or I nipped at it, but I didn't grab it because it's kind of looked like what I want to eat, but it wasn't close enough and I got scared. That last step in getting to commit is just kind of tweaking the color once you interact with a fish. So what are some baits to emulate the given forage in your lakes? For the basic forage that I mentioned earlier, starting with crawfish, most obviously your jig and trailer combinations. That's the most obvious crawfish imitator out there. And we all should have them. We all should know how to use them. We all should throw them. Some of your Ned Rig creature style baits, good old fashioned hula grubs, all do a great job of mimicking crawfish, crawdads, crayfish, whatever you want to call them. Your pitching rigs, your punching rigs can also work well, just worked along the bottom, especially if you're around grass. You eliminate that exposed weed guard and hook. It's way more weedless, but it still has that same effect. It's a skirted bait with a crawfish trailer, typically, but it's completely weedless. So now you can fish it more around grass or through grass on the bottom, but still have a crawfish type of bait. Long skinny fish baits, your jerk baits, Senkos or your stick style baits, drop shots. Obviously your little swim baits, all different kinds of swim baits you can throw. You know, some of these types are the paddle tail baits. Your hard style swim baits, your big Huddleston baits, 6-inch Huddleston baits, spook style baits, your whopper ploppers, something in a Damiki rig or a soft plastic fluke, swim jigs. Stuff to emulate the short round fish, obviously your little square bills. Another type of Huddleston, but it looks like a sunfish, little pumpkin seed. Spinner baits, especially if you don't run a trailer. Your lipless crankbaits, a chatterbait, especially if you don't run a trailer. And again, for amphibians and lizards, obviously your frog baits, rubber worms, soft plastic lizards, snakes. And that includes your Texas rigged worms, Carolina rigged worms. All that stuff emulates some type of a creature, long and skinny, that floats along and swims along the bottom, like your salamanders. In the rodent category, I really like a tri-wing buzzbait. And simply because of how slow I can reel this, it makes kind of a gurgling sound, like maybe something with a tail as it swims. And I can steer it with my rod and kind of make this thing swim around lily pads, around piece of cover, crash into stuff. Popper baits can also emulate something wounded sitting on top, but if you want to go actual rodent baits, then you can get into some of these types of topwater baits with some of your floating jointed rat baits. There's a lot of them on the market, and they sell just like the little rubber frogs. They sell little rubber mouse baits. You just work those a little differently than you work a frog. Instead of twitching them like a frog kind of hopping through the water, I like to just slow roll and retrieve those things and just let them kind of swim along the surface, let that tail do the work. And when it comes to our poor feathered friends, whether it's something that fell out of a nest or it's a bat that got stuck in the lake, these double bladed buzz baits do a great job. If you've ever seen a duckling run across the surface of the water, these things do a really job of mimicking that. And if you get them in a brown or you get them in a chartreuse and white, you kind of get that little duckling vibe about them. Or you can just go ahead and use duck baits. These are the suicide ducks, 2 different colors. This is more of a wood duck pattern. They've got that silhouette of a running duckling. And then obviously your traditional chartreuse and white if you're in a dirtier water. And obviously once Fish and Wildlife rings the dinner bell with all our trout plants, I mean, the smell of a lake after they've planted trout in there for a couple of days, it's undeniable. It's just you can smell, the lake smells like trout. So you can't tell me the bass don't key in on that. Obviously they do. So then you're getting into your trout baits, whether you want to go with a hard bait, a glide bait, any of your trout colored and trout shaped baits. It's a great time to try those. Something we touched on before when the fry hatches start. Now you're matching that hatch. So A rigs, mini A rigs, downsizing to 1/4 ounce baits, little 1/4 ounce and 1/8 ounce spinner baits, ball head jigs with a little straight tail minnow on the back, the Damiki rig, something is a good time for that when all the fry start hatching. So color selection for me is going to come down to water clarity. Most of our lakes are pretty clear, but again, 9 times out of 10, I'm probably starting with something natural colored, and I'm going to tweak from there, the light, bright, dark. One of the questions that was asked in that outing on Sunday was, how long do I stick with a bait? Now, there's a lot of variables that go into that answer. One, am I just out fun fishing? I'm not in a big hurry if I'm out fun fishing. I stopped the boat, I dropped the trolling motor in water, there were wolf packs of smallies. I was rifling through baits immediately. 2 or 3 casts on a bait, and I was switching baits to see if they liked something else, because I had them, I could see them. Throwing another bait, all kinds of stuff, and same thing. They would follow, they wouldn't commit, they'd follow, they wouldn't commit. But typically, eventually, they commit to something. They see something they like and they grab it. And then you start to dial in a pattern. And now I can start to vary colors within that pattern, sizes within that pattern. I can go to a jerkbait this long, a jerkbait that long, a jerkbait that sinks, a jerkbait that floats, a jerkbait that suspends. There's all kinds of little variables you can play with once you kind of lock into a shape and a action of something that the bass are going to react favorably to. So if I'm in a tournament, I'm give a bait about 30 minutes max, and I'm switching. Sometimes less than that. Sometimes I'm 10 casts and I'm switching baits. So when it comes to matching the hatch, is it important? Absolutely. It's the crux of everything we're doing out there. You're trying to determine what the preferred forage is on a given day, what the preferred depth is on a given day, what the feeding depth is on a given day. It is what keeps this industry alive. Matching the hatch is how you end up with all of this stuff in all of these colors, in all of these shapes and sizes, because there is no one bait fits all. There is no one bait does all. There are baits that will work potentially 365 days a year. But if you're out and you're throwing a bait and you're not getting bit, you have to change. You have to start playing around with sizes and shapes. And I would play with sizes and shapes first, then I'd start tweaking the color. So know your body of water. Know what forage lives in that body of water. Most of that information is available on Fish and Wildlife's website. If you can find your given lake, it should list everything that lives in that water. For the most part, you cannot go wrong with trout, perch, pumpkin seeds, and crawfish. Pretty much those are going to live in almost every body of water we have. So those are great jump off points. But on a given day, throwing a long skinny bait and nothing's happening for an hour, your first instinct should be not just to change color or type of bait, but shape of bait as well. And then see if you don't start eliciting strikes. See if you can't tie into what those fish are really keying on that given day, and it can completely change your day. I've had days started out with Skunk City until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and all of a sudden I cut everything off my rods. I changed everything over to different shapes, different colors, whatever, and I keyed into something, and it was such a night and day difference between how the day started to how the day finished that it makes you a believer in matching the hatch, knowing your forage base, matching your forage base, and going through your bait progressions, trying to put together what forage base is going to be dominant on that given day.